Welcome to the Badass Breastfeeding Podcast. This is Dianne, the lactation consultant.
And I'm Abby, the Badass Breastfeeder. Today's episode is brought to you by Fairhaven Health. Why waste your liquid gold in a breast pad? Wear the BPA-free Milky's Milk Saver and effortlessly collect every last drop of milk while you breastfeed. You can wear it on the opposite breast while breastfeeding or pumping to collect the letdown. Head to fairhavenhealth.com and use promo code BADASS for 10% off your purchase.
And I have the review of the week.
Yay.
Which is going to lead into a little bit into our story for today, or our episode today.
Oh my God, awesome.
This comes from Mommy Melon. And Mommy Melon says, "Thank you for being real and candid. I wish I knew you when I was a new mom with my first. You've answered so many questions and shed light on topics that no one ever talks about, not even our pediatricians. Keep the great info coming. I'm hungry for more." And that leads us into a little bit of what we're going to talk about today.
Okay, that was funny, Diane.
Yeah. But see, I didn't even read it like that. Like that's kind of punny, as my husband would say. Like,
it is.
He likes his little puns. But we're going to talk about solids today.
Oh, starting solids.
We're going to talk about solids because we get individually, Abby and I get questions about solids all the time. And then collectively, we get questions about solids and why isn't this been on the podcast all the time. So one of our
oh my God, it is unbelievable how much misinformation is out there coming, especially in this case, especially from pediatricians.
Yes. So that was kind of why I was like, oh, this kind of leads right into it, because we're going to be like totally real and candid about, solids, and we're going to really, talk about this because it is such a big deal. It is such a big deal. And the things that I see that happen with it are like, moms will come to me and they'll be like, okay, I can start solids now. And my doctor said I could go ahead and start solids. And then end of sentence. They don't know where to start, how much to give, how does breastfeeding fit into it, what do they give, what's allergies now, what do we say, so many different things that they're stuck going to the internet, which we all know that's full of danger, and trying to find stuff there. So there's really not a lot of guidance coming from
right.
doctors' offices, and not all of them, but from a lot of them. You just don't have a lot of guidance.
Right. And to start at the basics, we hear a lot of okay, well, so I brought my 4-month-old to the pediatrician, and the pediatrician said I should go ahead and start solids. Okay. According to the WHO, you should wait 6 months.
According to the American Academy of Pediatrics,
which is the licensing board of your pediatrician,
you should wait 6 months.
That we should wait 6 months. And why do we wait 6 months? What's something magical that goes around at 6 months?
Magical. Wow.
It is magical, the development inside of your baby.
Oh my
that's
gosh.
Going on,
so,
especially in the gut.
Yeah. So your baby is born, and this sounds weird, and I don't even talk. I used to talk about this more, but I don't talk about it as much anymore because I feel like it's so technical. But your baby is born technically with an open gut, they call it. And what all that means is that your baby is still developing, but it's very easy for allergens and bacteria and things like that to seep in. And that's how babies can have problems with allergies and food allergies if things are introduced too early before their gut is closed. And their gut is closed at 6 months. That is when their gut closes, is at 6 months. But when we talk about colostrum, how colostrum is so important for babies, in those first 2 days of life, one of the things that colostrum does is it almost works like a paintbrush and just seals their gut so that allergens cannot get up inside. So with that, the colostrum itself is helpful. So even if you do some supplementing after they get colostrum, at least their gut is a little bit protected. But that is one of the reasons why you should not start solids before 6 months, because they cannot digest them very well. Their system's not ready to digest foods yet. It could introduce allergies into their system. And food allergies are horrible to try to combat. So that is something that can happen if you start foods too early. If they're not developmentally ready, they're not sitting up, they're not, doing what they're supposed to be doing, they're not putting their hands to their face, they're not, all of those things. I mean, they have to be ready in more than just, okay, they're 4 months now.
Right. And the fact that they're maybe reaching onto your plate to get some food, that they're putting their hands to their mouth, those are not signs that they're ready to start solids. Those are signs that they reach for things and then they put everything in their mouth.
I had a mom tell me recently they went in for the 4 month and the doctor said, oh, your baby's starting to sit up, so you can start solids now. She's got a good head control, so you can start solids if you want to.
And that has none of this has anything to do with their gut, the development in their gut. That's why breast milk only until 6 months.
And that's all they need.
That's all they need.
All they need. Nutritionally, as far as like vitamins, nutrients, iron, all of that, proteins, fat content, all of that stuff is being provided for them. They do not need that.
And and let's admit it, it's hard to wait 6 months because starting solids is fun. It's really fun. I remember this with both my kids, that it was really exciting to start sharing different things with them and like that experience with them. And it is fun, and you will get there. But it is important to wait. But the time will come where you can have this fun.
Yes.
But the waiting is not just a simply there is actually a scientific reason for it.
Yeah, and and your baby really. There are some babies, I know you've talked about this before too, that aren't even ready at 6 months.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, and that ties into the next part of this. Is okay. We've waited 6 months. We're ready to start solids. And, so now my baby's not eating. So he's not eating the solids that I'm giving him. Is he going to be malnourished? Is he going to gain? Is he going to, my pediatrician says he needs to start eating. How do I push him to eat? How do I get him to eat? All of these questions are what I get. I even get questions, even recently, I got a question of my pediatrician says that my baby's, he's not eating enough solids because I'm breastfeeding him too much and I should cut back on breastfeeding. Okay, just because you can start solids at 6 months doesn't mean you stop breastfeeding.
Right.
Breastfeeding is still going to be their primary source of nutrition for quite a while, and that varies.
Right. The amount of food they're getting is like a tablespoon or 2 tablespoons.
Yeah, if that. Yeah. If they actually swallow it, it'll be 2 tablespoons in their hair and up their nose.
No, exactly.
And your hair.
It's not enough to consider it a meal to replace the breastfeeding when you first start solids. For the first couple of months of doing solids, it's not enough to replace your breastfeeding. So they really, to say, okay, well, stop breastfeeding and then they'll take more solids, that's not.
Yeah, and then we get to this, by this time, I had a pediatrician who was very much like, just keep breastfeeding. But there's a lot of people who have, 18 months old, even 2-year-olds that are not eating very much. They nurse a lot, but they're not eating very much. And the pediatrician starts to put all this fear into you. And the thing is that some kids just don't take to it as quickly as others. I mean, Jack was a good 2 years old and something before he actually started eating food. He was, he would try things and he would kind of sample things but he was all about the nursing. He would fill his belly on that breast milk and it took him a while to take to it. And there is nothing wrong with him. He was not malnourished. He was not missing out on important nutrients. I mean, your breast milk is the most nutrient-dense thing that you can possibly give your child. There is no reason to try to replace it with a pea.
But you have to think, too, that this is what your child has known. This is all they have done is breastfeed. And to switch from that to something with texture or, really strong flavor or just hot or cold or that could be very strange for your baby, for your child. So sometimes it needs to be eased in a little bit slowly, different textures, different flavors, different temperatures of things. There's a lot of different ways now to even start. Some people are really kind of strict on the purees and doing all the purees, and they love to be able to do that. And some people swear by the baby-led weaning. And it really depends on your comfort level. But babies, because babies can choke. not like choke to death, like gag on the food going in because it's a different texture. And that will scare the crap out of everybody, But babies that are breastfeeding now, you got to remember that from day one of their life, probably from hour one of their life to 6 months, all they have done is breastfeed, right? So, or maybe had an occasional bottle, or, if you went back to work, they've had bottles, whatever. But the majority of their feeds have been breastfeeding, which means that they have controlled their feedings from day one. Mm-hmm. And now you're going to go to sitting them in a chair and feeding them something. A lot of times that doesn't work well. The baby wants to do it because the baby is in control of their feeds. This is a good thing. Like, we want our kids to be in control of their hunger patterns and of their, what they want to do and how they want to eat and what they want to eat and how much of it they want to eat. We want them to control that. We don't want that being controlled by other people. So you have to keep in mind, if you start doing purees with your baby, they might not want you to put a spoon in their face. They might bat at it and push it away, and they might try to grab it and do it on their own because they want to do their own feeding. That's all they've ever done. They've always controlled their own feeds.
Yeah, I know people who don't have baby spoons in their house. They won't even use them.
Yeah.
And just let them do it on their own.
Let them do it on their own, or give them a spoon and you take a spoon.
Yeah.
That kind of thing too.
And you can show them. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Or they could just put a big mess in front of them and put it on their fingers.
I know. I had a mom recently. Oh my God, she was hilarious. We were talking, and her baby's like 10 months. And sometimes in my breastfeeding group, we'll talk about, like, the mamas that do have babies that are eating solids will talk about things that they're trying, because you kind of get into this place where you're like, all right, what should I try next? Like, I want to try, a food. What should I try next? I'm running out of things. And, so they were talking about different foods, and one of the mamas was saying that her daughter started solids, like, in around the fall or like end of summer. And they had all that fresh fruit because, where we live here in upstate New York, we have great, great seasonal stuff. But then once winter hits, like, it's crap, strawberries and stuff like that. Like, you can't get anything good. So she's like, so I can't give her all that great stuff, the melon and strawberry. Like, she doesn't eat it because I try, but she doesn't like it because it's not fresh and that real fresh flavor. So I'm like, well, make her a smoothie, or, I'm trying to make some different suggestions. And she goes, sometimes I just don't want that mess. And it's like, you gotta, like, it can be a mess. You are really, when you are starting solids with your baby, you better be planning to, like, put something on the floor, put them in there naked. And one of the other moms was like, when I know I'm feeding them something messy, I just stick them in the chair in a diaper, and that's the end of it. Like, it's a mess. It is a mess.
Put them in the bathtub with a plate.
Oh, that's a good
Why
idea.
not?
That's a good idea. Because it's going to be a mess. But a couple of the things to think about, too, with starting solids is that there are some downfalls. And like you said, it's really fun. And it is fun because they love it. They just enjoy it so much. But sometimes it comes with constipation.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes it comes with, now you got to accept that their poop has changed. I am sorry, ladies and gentlemen, but
here comes the smelly poop.
Poop is now adult smelling poop, is what it is now. So keep that, like, in the back of your head. That's one of the reasons why I was never really excited about starting solids, because that's when the poop changes. Mm-hmm. When you add food into the mix.
Yeah, that's true. Mm-hmm. Well, and so I don't know how you feel about this, but when I went to the pediatrician for Jack, who was my first, I was at this, office. And she said, okay, you can start solids now. I don't remember how old he was, but she was like, okay, and so here's what you do. And she always had her list of, like, what I'm supposed to do that she got, in school or whatever, and carries around with her. And she's like, so now you start with rice cereal, and then you move to, the vegetables and then the fruits. Okay. I never gave either one of my children cereal, and I would never, I don't buy the cereals or use the cereals. Those rice cereals and those fortified things, I always stuck to the whole foods. Nutritionally, there's no reason why you need to start with a cereal.
Right. And I don't know how I remember, like, one of our early episodes, you saying that a pediatrician told you once, to start with cereal and you questioned it and she said, oh, that's just what they told us to do.
This is the same person. She said, she looked so confused at me and she said, gosh, I don't know. That's just what they told us.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm really confident in that decision now.
Yeah.
I just don't see any reason to give them a box of cereal. That's not even a food. That's not a whole food. We don't need to have cereal.
Right.
So, it's just because you can buy it and the corporations sell it and they put it on the box that you need to have this. And, it's just another one of those things to tell people that they need to have.
And I did talk to a dietitian about this once. And she was saying, the cereals are good because they're fortified with iron. And at that point, like, babies do start needing an uptake of iron after 6 months of age. But, like you said, whole foods. You can get it from different foods.
We can all get it from food.
Right.
Yeah.
You can get it if you don't want. You don't have to do the cereal. You don't have to do that. You don't have to do purees. You don't have to. You can. I had a pediatrician tell me once, oh, it's been, they've changed it and now they're saying you should start with meats because that is more iron rich. There is different things that you
and
can
also
do.
Don't freak. If you're a vegetarian, you don't eat meat, don't freak out about that either because there's iron in a lot of food. You don't need to do that either.
Yeah. I'm a vegetarian and I have been since, before children, and all my kids were brought up, no meat until they decided to have meat on their own. So it really, I never did that. And everybody, of course, questioned it. So for any of the vegetarians out there, people are like, oh, you're going to make them not eat meat? I'm like, they can decide it when they want
Make
to.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm like, they can decide as they get older if they want to eat meat and, whatever. But while I'm feeding them, my choice is to not. So.
And that's perfectly nutritionally healthy.
Yeah, it's fine.
And let's pause for a word from our sponsor. Today's episode is brought to you by Fairhaven Health. With the Milky's milk tray, you can freeze your breast milk into 1 ounce sticks so you can thaw just the right amount of milk for each feed. Reusable and environmentally friendly and can be used for baby food later. How appropriate. Head to fairhavenhealth.com and use promo code BADASS for 10% off your purchase. That's promo code BADASS at fairhavenhealth.com. And so what do you think about the whole thing about, this is what I've always told people and heard early on, and I thought it was great. A great way to kind of give guidance in this way is when you start solids, you don't, then it's like, well, how do I balance the breastfeeding and balance the solid foods? How do I handle this? And I always heard that you would breastfeed first, get them filled up on the breast milk as much as possible, and then offer the solids, for each feeding.
Yep.
And I always thought that was great because I still think like I said, Jack breastfed, till he was 6.5 years old. He wasn't filling up on breast milk throughout the day all those years. But as long as he would, I did that up until he was, 3 or something. I always breastfed him first, got him as much breast milk as possible because I believe that is the most nutritious thing for him. And then I would serve him his food.
Yeah, and that's perfect.
And he would circle back around afterwards for, a drink.
There's really, I think especially when they're just starting out solids, 6, 7, 8, 9 months, that's definitely the way to go. Mm-hmm. But as they're getting a little bit older and they're interested, if they're more interested in solids and you're rolling with it and you're good with it, there's not a lot of rules,
There's not a rule. You're right. Mm-hmm.
You don't do what's working for you. There's been times where I told moms, leave solids at daycare so you don't have to worry about trying to provide milk every single time. If they're really struggling to keep up with the milk bottles by the time the baby's 10 months, 11 months, leave food at the daycare then. Leave a little bit less milk and some food for the daycare, and the baby will make up for it when they're with you later, because they will.
Totally.
But you can do...
Yeah, don't stress about it.
Yeah, there's no wrong or right, Sometimes people will start with just a little bit of food in the morning, and then after a month or so go to 2 little meals a day, in addition to, the breastfeeding. But the breastfeeding for those first few months of solids especially should come first. And then after that, they can eat.
Yeah. And you can also be adding other liquids in at this point, too. I mean, I'd say probably under 1... you would just use breast milk. But after a year, right? Maybe?
Yeah. And even after 6 months, sometimes I do have moms, especially if you want to, because I did this, but and I have other mamas that do it too. If you want to start something other than a bottle, if you want to start a sippy cup, you can do that at like 6 months. Yeah. So do that with water, just a little bit of water, and let them play with it and try it out and see if they can
throw it around.
Yeah. But don't put breast milk in a cup and let them play around with it all day, because then it'll get wasted. But you can do that with water, that's fine at that point.
Yeah. And so, let's, cause so we can take like the last few minutes and just try to ease some of the concerns that people have. Cause people are all the time, they're going to the pediatrician and they're hearing, okay, well, the doctor is concerned because my baby's not really eating a lot of solids. Now let's control for the whole, like, baby's gaining fine, baby seems fine, he's not eating a lot of solids. How much is he eating? Not that much. Well, then we get the pediatrician. Well, he should really be eating more solids now. So you should maybe cut back on the breastfeeding.
But now, what does that actually mean? Your baby should be eating more solids. Does that mean they should be eating more meals a day, more volume, more choices? Like, what does that mean? I would be very specific. If your pediatrician says to you, feed your baby solids or start with solids, I would ask them, how many times a day do I start with? How much do I start with? What do I start with? I would be very clear with this, because it is very vague to just say, okay, go ahead and start solids. And then you come back and your doctor says, oh, they're not doing enough. Well, did they tell you how much they should be doing to start with? Because maybe they didn't. And maybe you've only been doing once a day because you didn't push more than that, because you didn't know that you should or could.
Right. And
it's very confusing and very, very, you just get into this rhythm of breastfeeding, and then you introduce something else into it. And you're like, okay, how is this going to interfere with my breastfeeding? And what happens next? And do I give it at night? Do I give it in the morning? Is it going to impact their sleep? Is it, what do I do? So there's a lot of questions.
Well, and the thing is that your pediatrician is not a nutritionist.
Right.
They're not going to know the answer to these questions. They're going to give you answers. They will definitely give you answers, and they might not be the right answers.
Right.
They don't know. They don't have training in this. They were given, like my pediatrician told me, they were given a list, and that's what they're told. That's what they're told to tell people. But if you focus on breastfeeding, and here's the saying that I love: food before one is just for fun. This is a time where they're experimenting with it. They're learning about how it looks and how it feels and how to pick it up. This is just a time for them to start experimenting.
Right.
And there's no need to start panicking about it. This is not an emergency.
No, it's not. I had a mom at my postpartum support group one time, postpartum mood disorder support group that I facilitate. She was over the edge with anxiety because she was supposed to be starting solids and had no idea what to give her child so that she knew that he was getting the right nutrition. Like, she was, and quite honestly, maybe I sound like the worst mom on the planet. I never even thought of that. Like, I never even thought of, oh my gosh, my child is going to start solids now, and pretty soon they're only going to be they're going to be eating more solids than anything else. And am I going to be able to give him enough so that he gets all the vitamins and nutrients that he's supposed to be getting? Like, am I going to be able to do that? How do I know what's enough? How do I know what a serving is for him? How do I know what? And I never thought of that.
What is so funny? It's so funny that you say that, because I think, the internet and all of this, this information, age is so wonderful. We're getting answers to things that we didn't have before. It's a wonderful thing, but it's also causes a lot of problems that weren't there.
Yeah.
I mean, I was talking to my grandmother about attachment parenting one time, and she was like, we never had any of these, what? She was like, there was no words like this. There was no conversation like this. We were just parenting, and people were just breastfeeding. And, you did kind of what your family did and what the community around you did. Mm-hmm. And now there's so much information out there that you just wouldn't think about something. And then it's there in your Facebook feed, and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm supposed to be worrying about that. I didn't know. Let me add that to my list of things to worry about. and it's true. We all have this long list that we're worrying about. And it's based on all this information that we didn't have. And listen, I mean, there's so much out there that we should be questioning, that we're getting, that we're learning about now, that we should be, pushing up against. And that's true. But there's a lot that of this that's causing confusion and anxiety that just doesn't need to be there.
Yeah. You are going to do just fine.
You are going to do wonderful.
You are.
You're not going to start solids wrong.
No.
It's not going to happen. And if your doctor is telling you, that your baby's in peril because, of, of the way that they're doing solids, it's just not true. I mean, if there's other things, if your child is having trouble, gaining weight or whatever, talk to a lactation consultant. This is something that, can be dealt with. On the breastfeeding side of things, you don't just suddenly feed them stuff, feed them potatoes more during the day and they'll gain weight. Like, it doesn't work like that.
No. And if you really do have some concern about that, then, like Abby said, talk to a lactation consultant, because I have people that ask me about this all the time, and we talk about how to balance, the breastfeeding and why the breastfeeding is still so important, and, where to go with the solids. And a lot of times too, I will refer them. I have a colleague who's a dietitian and nutritionist, and she does a lot of this stuff, and she can help, especially if you have a specialty diet. I've had moms say, I want my kid to be vegan. My doctor's giving me some pushback. What should I do? I send them right to my friend. How much do I give to the baby? What's a serving? I send them to my friend. Because she can help. She can do menus. She can do all of that stuff with them. And if you're one of those people who likes that structure, then absolutely find a dietitian in your area and they will help you with that. And when I suggest that to people, they're always like, oh, I never even thought of that.
Well, here's another profession that just doesn't get any play because, I mean, you go to the pediatrician, you have a breastfeeding problem, they give you some kind of random answer. What you need to do with a breastfeeding question is go to a lactation consultant. They are the ones who have lactation information. If you have a nutrition question, there are people called nutritionists.
They go to school for a long time. They really
your doctor doesn't have nutrition training.
Yeah.
These are just not medical things. This is not why they went to medical school. It's not what they were learning. They learned some amazing, life-saving, wonderful, useful skills that we need to have, but it's just not those things.
Right.
There's other specialty. If your child had some sort of special medical problem, they would refer you to a specialist, and that's what they need to be doing with lactation and nutrition, questions too.
Right. Exactly. That's exactly right. And I came from a family, my mom's Italian, and, it was like, just bring them up, put them at the table and give them some food. Like, that's what we did. Just put them at the table with the rest of the family and give them some food. And that's kind of another fun thing too. It's like, you want your baby to be at the table with you. That's so fun with that. Like, it's just the experience of, this is what family dinner time is like. This is, that whole new experience. It's not even about the food necessarily. It's more about having a different experience with your baby. It's so fun.
Right. Bringing them more and more into the family. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Totally.
Yep. It's great. You'll love it. You'll love it.
Yeah.
But we wanted to make sure we got this episode out because we've had so many questions about it. So, definitely let us know if there's other concerns you have that we didn't talk about.
And we'll do an episode.
Yeah.
Voila. You see. You tell us. We do.
See how that works?
Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
And please share your experience in the review section on iTunes. And maybe you'll be our review of the week. And head to badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com for sponsor links, for promo codes, for a resources list, and all of our other episodes that are awesome. And you can also find out how to get your personal online consultation with Dianne, the lactation consultant that you should go to with your lactation questions.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Bye.
Bye.